Pahlavi texts, translated by E.W. West, Part 5 Marvels of Zoroastrianism, Sacred Books of the East, Volume 47, Chapter 7. About the marvelousness which is manifested after the time of Istasp until the collapse Hangaftano of the sovereignty of Evermore. There is marvelousness which is manifested after Vistasp until the collapse of the sovereignty of Everland, apart from the blessedness of ordeal, the accomplishment of other Vestic rites, the great power over the sacred fires, and many other religious observances which were connected with the disciples of Zarathustra. Even after the devastation which happened owing to Alexander, those who were rulers after him brought back much to the collection from a scattered state, and there are some who have ordered the keeping of it in the treasury of Shapon. So here, but usually written Shapigon and sometimes Shaspigon, it was no doubt a royal treasury, and in Dean Card 534 calls it so, but uses the words Gango e Kudayan, in which Gamasp is said to have deposited the Avesta and Zand written in gold upon ox hides. If Shapigan be a corruption of Shah Yagan royal, it is singular that some copyist has not corrected the spelling. And remember, the ox myth and the gold relating to the term Zarathustra. You know, the guy with the golden camels. Or perhaps the ruddy camels. But gold has its symbolism in itself, right? And the scattered state, referring to the king Volkas, the Askanen, probably Vologeses I, see Sacred Books of the East, Volume 37, page 413. Likewise, there is to be brought forward what there is concerning the names of rulers and high priests, such as arrive for it at times and periods, which are each consecutive as organizers of the religion, and the world also of the tyrant or apostate, who is manifest at various periods for the disturbance of the religion and monarchy and the penance of the world, with the coming of the penitential one, such as Vohumano, the son of Spendad, of the rulers, about whom it says even this in the Avesta, that he is Vohumano, the just, who is the most efficient of the assembly of Mazda worshippers. The Avestan Spento Data of Yast 1303, a son of Vistasp, with whom Avesta dynastic history ends. He was the Persian Isfendiar, and his son Vohumano is unknown to the Avesta. The Kitradad Nask, being card 8, 13, 18, mentions a Namun, son of Spenched, which probably stands for Vohumano, son of Spendad, but this appears to have been a Pahlavi supplement compiled in Sasanian times. He is also mentioned in Bundahis 34.8, a chapter about the computation of years by the Arabs according to the Iranian Bundahis, and Sinov of the high priests. As about him, it says even this: the religion becomes 100 years old when Sinov is born, and 200 years when he passes away. He was also the first Mazda worshipper with a life of 100 years, and who walks forth upon this earth with 100 disciples. The Avestan of his name is Sa'ena of Yas 1397, where the last clause of the passage here translated from the Avesta occurs Per Substarum 23:11. And, well, the first Mazda worshipper under Zarathustra. But at some point the name, as prophet, but at some point the name was a new name, but it wasn't, like, that's the first person to worship God. That doesn't make any sense, even if you put him back 6000 BCE. Also, Alexander of the Devastators, as it says even this of him in Revelation, that in those 3 winters, which are of like purpose, Ayazako, that Hashem would set up a deadly king in the impenitent world, who is the evil destined Alexander. Revelation, but not the extent of Vesta. Of course, it's said that that was much bigger, and the others were translations or representations. And the demon of wrath, Asham, and of the high priests are Rezvak, the interpretation whose name is the pure word, Srutvok, Spadak, the interpretation of whose name is the propitious recitation, Srayang Hao, the interpretation of whose name is the ocean existence, and Spento Kratvau, the interpretation of whose name is the perpetuous wisdom. And the Vestan of these names are the Rezvau and Sruto Spadau, and Yast 1315. And these 2 names are written in their Avestan genitive forms as they occur in Yast 1315. Because it says even this about them, namely, I mention thy manifestation, and also the tokens of its publicity, when this religion of thy Mazda worshippers becomes 400 years old in this law, benightedness, Lelyai, arises, and the embodied existences see the manifestation through calculation of the planets and also the stars, and whoever 2 are mine are so for a century, through the average opinion of 30 medium winters for man, and the righteous Arezvak, and those 3 others are they of the most righteous existences, over whom they are the most masterly, the most authoritative in that time, 2. And this 2, they who glorify the religion of the Mazda worshippers in the 5th and 6th centuries they are, and no persons save their souls except those who remain for the arrival of the 4 interpretations that arise through the authority of these 4 individuals, Arezvak, Sroto, Spadau, Srayang Hao, and Spento Kratvau, who, all 4 of them, seek their thoughts, words, and deeds in the sacred text. Mansar. If the chronology in Bundahis 34:7-8 were correct, the interval between the first revelation of the religion and the death of Alexander would be 272 years, and this would make the 400th year of the religion coincide with BCE 195. There's for man, that is for a generation. The meaning appears to be that these 4 successive high priests ensure the continuance of Orthodox religion for more than a century, or well into the 6th century of the religion, as mentioned in verse 10. So 30 years is their term for a century, for a generation, I mean. And typically people talk like a generation is 20 years, but in the arrival of the 4, the manuscript has a cipher for 3 by mistake. Or is that intentional, right? And here, written in Avestan characters, is Struto Spavau. Also, Rashin Resh is the apostate of the time. As someone says, and the Rashin, one of the sacred beings, and about many besides this one. Thus, all who are creatures of the beneficent spirit are distressed by their persecution, but put trust in those men, Rezvak, and those three others. Someone, probably Uharmazd, or someone representing Uharmazd, and Resh and Resh. In Dean card 398, or is it 198? Yeah, 198 verse 2. This apostate is said to have been, in page 85, associate, Hampaigar of the Christian ecclesiastic Akvan, and yells out 10 admonitions, contradicting those of the righteous Senov, who is mentioned in 6 Peshotan's edition, volume 5, page 239 and 311. It does not follow that he was a contemporary of Senov, and here seems to be placed fully 2 centuries later. And of the organizers of the period is Artakshatar, the son of Papak, as it says even this about him, namely, which is that ruler who is powerful, more striving than the Kyans, and mighty, an embodiment of the sacred commandments, and awfully armed, in whose abode the Harisvang, the virtuous and radiant, walks forth in maiden form, beneficent and very noble, well-formed, high-girded, and truthful, of illustrious race and noble. Takshatar, the founder of the Sasanian dynasty, who reigned as king of the kings of Persia, 226 to 241 of the Common Era, and awfully armed. Most of these qualities are applied to the angel Shrosh, the personification of obedience. See Yasna 57 verse 1. Also to Kave is Tasba, and Karsna, son of Zibautervant, in Yas 1399, 106, and Arisvang, Avestan Shis, Vanguhi, good rectitude, personified as a female angel. Her description is given in Yast 13, 107, and is similar to that of Anahita in Yast 5, 64. And just as angels are operators of certain qualities, it's good for us to strive to being examples of these qualities as well. Whoever is that, on the occurrence of strife, seeks prosperity for himself with his own arm. Whoever is that, on the occurrence of strife, encounters the enemies with his own arm. Tanvasar is also for his assistance, as it says this too about them. Zarathustra acts begin thus: who is he who is the most salutary for a country, which the demons have exhausted of everything virtuous, over which his authority is brought, and which is wicked and teaching falsehood? And Tanvasar, so spelt here in verse 17 and 18, that was just verse 14 we read, thrice in all. It is also spelt thrice, Tansar in Dean card 3, last chapter 7, 4, 25 and 35, and this misspelling has led to the mispronunciation of Tosar. It appears, however, that Tanvasar is a transposition of Tanvar's hairy-bodied, page 86, because we are told that Tansar are Tanvasar was so called on account of all his limbs being covered with hair. Bars. His statement occurs in the introduction to Tanvasar's letter to Ushnas Shah. Shah or Gasnef, uh, I mean Gasnef Shah, king of Badash, Kavargar, or Farshvadgar, and Tabaristan, and is made on authority of an old Pahlavi copyist, Bahram Kurzad, whose Pahlavi was translated into Arabic by Ibn Papa in the middle of the 8th century of the Common Era, and that into Persian early in the 13th century. See Dermester's edition in Journal Asiatique for 1894, page 185 to 250, 205 to 555, and okay, AR can't be Arabic because of the letter V there. So it would have Armenian? Is that what? Harmazd spoke thus: an autocrat, Sastar, to cure a country, who has not gone mad, that is, he does not annoy the good, and is well directing, that is, he gives virtuous commands, who is also of noble race, and likewise a priest who is acquainted with war, of a famous province, and righteous, are most salutary for that country. And I tell thee this, that the apostasy of destruction is just like the four-legged wolf, which the world gives up running away. Nordak et Chisne. That is, owing to its action, they are leading it off as a stray, which is so that even he who is not opulent is rendered sickly, and that they, the apostates, may take away his things by the hand of the assassin, Hunyan, and they shall lead the world, the dwelling for his residence into wandering. Now, in the Islamic vision, there's no punishment for the people for apostasy, blasphemy, or disbelief. It's not something the state enforces. But there's cases of apostates that robbed, that killed, and stuff like this. And people are like, oh, he killed, had the apostates killed. It's like, what did those apostates do after their apostasy? But that wicked Avaruno strife descended upon that country, besides that wicked demon worship, besides that wicked slander, and not even that wicked strife, nor that wicked demon worship, nor that wicked slander is dissipated from that country until the time when they attack the grant of approval to them, the spiritual leader, the eloquent Pur Guftar, truthful speaking, and righteous Tanvasar. And it is when they grant approval to the spiritual leader, the truthful speaker of eloquence, the righteous Tanvasar, that those of the country obtain redress. Bashah Zagani, when they seek it, and no deviation, and na you in akoi, from the religion of Zarathustra. As to the nature of the questions and the statements of the organizer of the religion, Aturpad, the son of Mauraspend, about the connection of the glory with the race, it also says this, that though righteousness may arise from the statements and prosperity of the Turanians when extracted by questions, it is said that its acceptance occurs there through complete mindfulness. They benefit the embodied world of righteousness and produce distress to the fiend in like manner. They rely upon Lohumano, and Zarathustra is their delight through the report of the birth of Zarathustra from us who are archangels. A translation of the Avestan Spenta Armaete, the archangel Spendamart. complete mindfulness. Okay. Spendar mod. And Etrpad was a high priest who was a minister of King Shahpuhar II, 309 to 379 of the Common Era. He is often mentioned in Pahlavi writings, but in the Avesta he is only alluded to, apparently by the title of Vrestare Vogent in Yast 13, verse 106. This liberality for thee is from us, who are archangels, and Etrpad, the very best, well-destined man arose, and this too do thou say about him, that is the steel age, in which that man, the organizer of development and organizer of righteousness, Etrpad, son of Maraspend of the convocation, begets Avarethrbau, so written in all 3 times in Pazand. He is the Avarethra Bomb, page 88, son of Restare Vogent of Yast 13, 106, better known as Zarathustra, the son of Etrpad, in his old age, for whom the Andar Z Etrpad E Moraspendan was written. This Avareth Rabau too is an organizer whose righteous guardian spirit we reverence. And in memory of Manuskihar, the well-destined and a progenitor of Etrpad, it says that only from him comes Avarethrabau, and then also arises this one of the adversaries of the religion, the apostate of apostates, whom they have even called the Mazdagig, and Mazdagigic, probably some disciple of Maneh, the heretic, who had been put to death in 276, and the pedigree of Etrpad was traced back to Manuskihar and Bundahist 33.3. And Mazdag was put to death in 528 of the Common Era. See Sacred Books of the East, volume 37, page 257 and 278. And as it says this, too, about them, namely, this religion of mine thou dost survey with thoughts of spiritual life, thou dost verily thoroughly inspect it. O Zarathustra, when many, aware of apostates, call the performance of righteousness and even the priesthood innocence, and few are frank in practicing. Again, there was a type of priesthood that he was trying to make it about everybody's spiritual authority to perform their sacred rites and all that stuff. In the revelation of the master worshippers is this, namely, thoroughly look into revelation and seek a remedy for them and any whatever of them who have become disturbing in the embodied existence and uncaptivated by the orthodox yin umond righteousness, which is owing to the perfect existences, and so they divide the religion of the master worshippers through division of race. They speak regarding the action of their own followers and give the endowment to their own. They grant supplies of food, so that they may say the food is proportional to the hunger. They speak of procreation, and say that they say lineage is through the mothers. And they approve of wolfishness, so that they would act something like wolves in the performance of gratifying their desires, like that of the wolf's progeny behind the mother. Moreover, they form their lineage through the mothers, buying their women as sheep. They shall carry off for profit even that son or brother who is the progeny, those that we have produced for your companionship, you are not predominant, but have remained in companionship. You do not even believe them, but you do not establish an ordeal, although it is evident that you will be acquitted. They lie even to their children, so that the advance of the promise breaker is through them, and even in their own persons. This quotation from a Pahlavi version of an Avestan text would probably be very applicable to the state of the Persian people at many periods in the 4th and 5th centuries of the Common Era, when heresy was prevalent and orthodox Zoroastrianism was by no means universal. It's interesting how what's labeled as orthodox is usually secondary, right? It's not the original path of the prophets or whatever and their followers. It's something that happened in later generations. Some of the evils mentioned are inseparable from slavery at all times. Here it speaks about the organization of the religion by the glorified Khusroi, son of Kavad. Thus, upon their lingering behind, a man is produced who is righteous, the glorified one, and approver, Kenidar, of speech, who is wise, whom the convocation, on hearing the words that he utters, speaks of as a high priest, that is, when he gives out penance, Srosigi, so that he may effect the punishment of sinners. Glorified one, so of the good spirits. And religion of the glorified, literally the immortal soul. Enoshak Ruban, the usual title of King Khusro I, who reigned in 531 to 578 of the Common Era. Before he became king, 528 or 529, he had summoned an assembly of priests to condemn the heretic Mazdag, when the last important revision of the Pahlavi versions of the Avesta probably took place. Hit 168 and Noldex Virasas, says page 463 to 466. Yeah, any changes after that point were minute, but there were changes even until the 1700s, and then it got standardized enough that there weren't any more changes after that, I don't think. Of course, the Bible, there's still things that they're doing to the Bible versions, and not just incorporating things from older manuscripts. The constant outpouring of perplexity, Pek Sharidan, by the perverters, is the fear that the hero, as regards that convocation, when he casts them forth by expulsion from the vicinity, so that he may make them extinguished very quickly, owing to that they whose producer is even he who is a person destroying the righteous man, become gloomy on account of the glorified one. Through his smiting, the spiritual life of apostasy, just as now, when he who is gloomy and of scattered intellect is gloomy owing to you of the Spitimas. This too it states, namely, in every way I tell thee, O Zarathustra of the Spitimas, that their time is mistrustful of Amar as to him who is an open friend, and most deceitful both to the wicked and the righteous. The glorified one is a controller, the Yuktar, exalting the creatures, and whoever is possessing the creatures of the righteous ones, so that he remains again at work in the doings of the glorified one, is he who is a combiner of the actions and an utterer of the true replies of that glorified one. Creatures of the righteous ones, so creatures of the Avesta. The scripture itself, not necessarily the language, right? And about the occurrence of a symptom of the devastators of the sovereignty and religion of the country of Iran, one wonder, which is associated with the religion, is even this which it mentions thus, Thereupon, when the first symptom of a ravager of the country occurs, O righteous Zarathustra, then the more aggressive and more unmerciful in malice becomes the tyrant of the country, and through him too they ravage, they shend the house, through him the village, through him the community, through him the province, and through him even the whole of that manifestation in the country of any teaching whatever that occurs through the ravager of the country. And so the country should keep a man who is observant and learned on the watch, because information is in his mind. Thereupon the second symptom of a ravager of the country occurs, and so on. Stuff like that. The whole of this section is omitted in the old manuscript, evidently by mistake. Perhaps the second symptom of devastation was connected with the evil deeds of the warrior class, but this is very uncertain. Passages of 4 or 5 words are also omitted by the manuscript in verse 31 and 32, which are what follows. Thereupon, when the third symptom of a ravager of the country occurs, the priestly people are disturbing the tradition, so that they speak nothing wisely. It is even on this account they do not accept them, and it is not when one speaks truly that the ravager of the country believes them, and through him too they ravage the house, through him the village, through him the community, through him the province, and through him even the whole of that manifestation in the country of any teaching whatever that occurs through the ravager of the country. And so too the country should keep a man who is observant and learned on the watch, because information is in his mind. Thereupon, when the fourth symptom of a ravager of the country occurs, it upsets the replenishment of the fires, and it sets those men of the righteous, so that they shall not undertake the care of them, and thus they shall not convey the holy water to him who is a priestly authority, so that they may not produce the seizing upon the stipend of the priestly authorities by him, who is the ravager of the country. Through him too they ravage the house, through him the village, through him the community, through him the province, and through him even the whole of that manifestation in the country of any teaching whatever that occurs through the ravager of the country. And so too the country should keep a man who is observant and learned on the watch, because information is in his mind. About the collapse of the sovereignty of Iran, it also states this, namely, that very villain, O Zarathustra, brings those provinces on to running astray, so that he may make those quite dissevered which constitute the existence of that powerful sovereignty, and then he is a thorough assailant of the righteous. Then he is an assailant of the righteous with eagerness. Then that same deadly one, O Zarathustra, does not continue living long afterwards. Moreover, his offspring disappear, that is, they perish utterly. But his soul falls at the bottom of the gloomy existence, which is a horrible hell, and upon their bodies every kind of unseemly unhappiness comes from themselves, owing to their own actions, when they give approval to the imprisonment of a guardian of spiritual affairs who is eloquent through speaking and righteous. See, any ill in your afterlife is the hell of your own making. It's not something that's forced upon you. It's that you made choices to make it that way, right? Against that deadly one he contends, O Zarathustra, for the spiritual lordship and priestly authority that I approve as good for the whole embodied existence. Also against the preparation of a decree to produce evil decisions, and against the dismissal of litigants, whether heterodox or orthodox, who are of a family of serfs of a far situated village and are making petitions. And as to the land too, over which he wanders, the evil spirit utterly devastates their country through pestilence and other misery, and moreover strife which is tormenting falls upon that country, besides demon worship which is iniquitous, and besides slander which is iniquitous, and the strife which is iniquitous is not to be dissipated from that country, nor the demon worshippers who are iniquitous, or the slander which is iniquitous, before the time when they give approval to him to who the priest who is a guardian of spiritual affairs, who is eloquent, true speaking, and righteous. And it is when they give him approval that they obtain helpfulness for the country, when they pray for it, and not irregularly for him, regularly from him, O Zarathustra. And this, when he is recounted, is a statement that is exploited, nafrig ito, by many, details from the Avesta as to occurrences that will arise after this tasp until the dispersion anga lisno of the sovereignty of Iran from the country of Iran. It is also declared that this which is written happened to the knowledge of those of the world. This, too, is about the evidence of the above, and if this, which is declared from the Avesta, as to what happens after Ka'i Vistasp until the end of the sovereignty of Iran, should not have happened, and it being the preeminence of the Avesta, which really became this present treasure, it thereby ensues, owing to its position in that former, derived or interpreted from the Avesta, and the manifest absence of the destruction of those rulers and high priests from this tasp onwards in this letter, that it could not be connected with us. This latter, again, the present Avesta itself, connected with us, meaning perhaps that for some good reason it could not be communicated to us in the extant Avesta. In verse 39, which is the last verse of this chapter, be not a later addition to this chapter, it implies that the prophetical quotations from the Avesta regarding the history of the religion after the time of page 94 of this tasp were no more extant in the Avesta when the Dean card was compiled than they are now. And you kind of think of what happened with Christianity versus Tanakh, is you had a later generation deciding their religion based on that, and there were multiple things. So there was the Sasanians, there was the Achaemenians, there was the Magians, and it appears all three of those were the significant revival periods.